Welcome back. You're looking at the pictures of the federal courthouse in New York. They're the breaking news today. The longtime Trump lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for 9 crimes total. 8 crimes charged by the Southern District of New York. That is why he received a 3-year sentence. Another crime by the special counsel's office lying to Congress, a sentence a couple of months there, but to be served concurrently. Judge William Pauley also ordering $1 million in restitution for Michael Cohen. Our Shimon Prokopez is outside the courthouse where we're waiting to see the key players emerge from the big sentencing hearing today. Michael Cohen, obviously, the prosecutors and defense attorneys as well. Shimon, help us set the scene there.
Yeah, so obviously just looking over my shoulder here, you can see the court security staff, the U.S. Marshals, now all outside. We're all waiting for Michael Cohen and his attorneys to walk out of court. Police have also closed the street down to traffic, waiting for him to leave so that he can quickly get out of here. There's a black car parked outside the courthouse here that we believe he's going to get into. But everyone right now outside of the courthouse just waiting for Michael Cohen to come outside, some of the reporters. And here we go. Here's his family, John. This is his daughter, his son, his wife coming out first. Sir, excuse me.
All right, let's see.
So there you just saw his daughter come out with his wife and son. We're now waiting for Michael Cohen to come outside with his attorney. We don't know if they're going to speak. There is some microphones set up for them to speak if they choose to, but we don't know yet if they're going to come out and say anything. But clearly that's what everyone out here right now is awaiting, for him to come outside. Since we just saw his family, I assume he should be coming out shortly. And you'll just see a lot of the security staff of the courtroom. There's probably close to 100 photographers, reporters out here waiting for him to come outside, which should be at any moment now.
One of the closest aides to businessman Donald Trump, candidate Donald Trump, left on the outside when it became President Donald Trump, being sentenced to 3 years in prison. Again, 9 federal crimes he's being sentenced for. 8 of them really have little or nothing to do with Donald Trump. Personal financial crimes, the judge saying Michael Cohen may have taken advantage of his reputation for working for Donald Trump, his high profile in Manhattan, working for Donald Trump for these greedy crimes. The other one lying to Congress about Trump Tower business dealings in Moscow, trying to sell a Trump Tower idea in Moscow during the presidential campaign. That has ramifications. So we're going to keep our eyes on these pictures to see if Michael Cohen comes out. You see some of the attorneys coming out now. Here he is. Let's see if he speaks. There you see Michael Cohen getting into the black car with his wife, his son, and his daughter and driving off, choosing not to speak. That in and of itself, a big development in the sense that for years, Michael Cohen threw punches for Donald Trump. There's no other way to put it.
Oh yeah,
he tried to spin. He tried to spin stories for Donald Trump. If you wrote things or said things about the businessman, even before he was in politics, then the candidate, and even the president in the early months of the Trump administration, Michael Cohen would, I don't say this in a bad way, get in your face. He was a sharply loyal counterpuncher and sometimes puncher. Julie Pace of the Associated Press joins the conversation. Part of the conversation here, Michael Cohen is now facing a 3-year prison sentence. The question is, number one, how does the president react? And number two, does it affect, you're seeing some of the attorneys in the case coming out here as well. Let's listen just for 1 second here.
He said no comments, so should we get somebody else? Let's go.
All right, bring the conversation back to the room. Sometimes we're all laughing. Sometimes
that's a New York moment.
That's a New York moment outside a courthouse. The lawyers emerge. You try to see if they have anything to say. It's not always pretty looking, but it's reporters trying to do their job, photographers trying to do their job. One of the questions here is, A, how does the president react? And B, does this change here in Washington? This case playing out in New York. Here in Washington, this has played out largely along what tribe are you in? Democrats say Michael Cohen's testimony, Michael Cohen's guilty pleas, now Michael Cohen going to federal prison is proof that the president was part of this corrupt and the leader of this corrupt group of people. Republicans say Michael Cohen committed these crimes. He says these things about the president. Who knows if they're true? Let's go. Here we go. Michael Avenatti, I'm told, speaking now. What he has to do with this, I'm not quite so sure, but there he is.
And only until his back was against the wall and he faced significant prison time did he decide to, quote, come clean. He even lied to the office of the special counsel in July of this year. Michael Cohen is no hero. He is no patriot. His choice, time and time again, was to degrade my client, seek to intimidate her, call her and me liars, and seek to degrade the office of the presidency of the United States by seeking to buy effectively an election. This is an outrage. He deserves every day of the 36-month sentence that he will serve. And I will also note with great irony, Michael Cohen.
All right, you listen to Michael Avenatti, who is the attorney for Stormy Daniels, of course. One of the allegations, one of the things Michael Cohen has now been convicted of is the Southern District of New York says in the payments to Stormy Daniels and in the payments to Karen McDougal, Stormy Daniels being the adult film actress, Karen McDougal, a Playboy centerfold, that the Southern District of New York alleges Michael Cohen and candidate Donald Trump, named as individual number one in the documents, violated campaign finance laws. That is what is alleged. That's why Michael Avenatti, like a moth to light, I guess, is in the courthouse here. He's someone who likes attention. Julie Pace, I was trying to have a conversation about things that actually matter. Sorry, Michael Avenatti. Here in Washington, in the sense that we don't know how the president is going to react to this. He cannot say this is the coffee boy, George Papadopoulos, or he cannot say, which is ludicrous, Paul Manafort. I think he was around for a couple of months at one point. Paul Manafort was central. But the president often dismisses, like, I think I barely knew that person. This was his right-hand man in all things sort of gray, if you will. What happens now?
It's really difficult for the president to separate himself from Michael Cohen. Where he has been leaning, and where I think it's likely he will continue to lean, is on the idea, as you said, that much of what Cohen is being sentenced with here didn't have anything to do with Trump directly. But one piece of it did, and that's the campaign finance violation. That is directly related to Donald Trump and his campaign, and as Michael Cohen says, an effort to basically conceal information that could have been damaging from the public. I think the reaction from Republicans around that has been really fascinating. You do have some people saying, it doesn't matter, or it's not that big of a deal. I think Democrats are going to try to make it a big deal. We've seen other politicians get off on similar campaign finance violations, but that one is, again, just going to be really difficult for the president to separate himself from, because it involves him personally and his campaign directly.
I do think, though, it's not a slam dunk. I mean, look, the president has a very good defense here if he chooses to use it, which is, I was trying to save my family from the embarrassment of these revelations. It had nothing to do with the campaign. You're beginning to see sloppily a little version of that, but that's going to be the defense. That's the one that could work.
Right, hang on just one second. I'm going to bounce around a little bit because of breaking news story, but Arcara Scannell was in the courtroom in New York as all of this played out. The prosecutors speak, Michael Cohen speaks, the judge speaks. Kara, take us inside that courtroom. A lot of drama today.
Oh, John, it was so emotional inside the courtroom today. We had Michael Cohen speaking, coming into tears when he was saying it broke his heart that the shame and the pain he's brought onto his family by committing these crimes. His family members were all very emotional. He was surrounded by friends and family. His daughter was sitting right behind him, his wife, son, his mother, father, in-laws, cousins. They all came over after the sentencing, which seemed like an absolute shock to them. You could hear some sobbing in the courtroom as he was told he was going to have 36 months, 3 years in prison. And they came over and they all hugged him. There was a lot of intense embraces, long embraces, handshakes. Everyone looked very shocked, I'd say. I think they were expecting him to have a much lighter sentence, if not any time at all, John.
Dramatic inside the courtroom, Kara. Appreciate that insight from straight inside. The emotions playing out, as Kara notes. And the question now is, Michael Cohen's facing 3 years in prison. Michael Cohen can try to reduce that by cooperating further, both on his own personal financial crimes, and B, we know the special counsel, among the Office of Special Counsel, among the things they're looking into is Michael Cohen now says he was lying, and by extension, Donald Trump was lying, and everyone in the Trump organization and Trump campaign was lying about how late into the campaign year of 2016 were they in negotiations or at least contact with Russians about the possibility of a Trump Tower Moscow. I want to come back to the campaign finance violations, and Jennifer Rogers, I hope you're still with us in New York. The president says things. I assume the president's lawyers cringe when he gives media interviews. Evan Paris was just making the case, and I get this. The president could say, I didn't want to embarrass my wife. I didn't want to embarrass my family. We decided whether these affairs happened or not. We decided to pay off these women, to keep them silent, to protect my family. It's the timing that makes it so interesting because the affairs happened years ago. The payments were made in the middle of the presidential campaign. The President of the United States said this to Reuters yesterday in an interview. Michael Cohen is a lawyer. I assumed he would know what he's doing. You rely on somebody. Hey, he was a lawyer. Number one, it wasn't a campaign contribution. If it were, it's only civil. And even if it's only civil, there was no violation based on what we did. Based on what we did. The President of the United States right there is saying he was part of these payments with Michael Cohen. The President doesn't get to decide, nor do I think he has a full understanding of what's civil, what's criminal, what's misdemeanor, what's felony. If you were his attorney, I assume that would make you bang something. Let me just put it that way.
That's right. He's in a lot of trouble here. I mean, and he's admitted it. Rudy Giuliani has admitted it. You know, it doesn't have to be that it's just the purpose of influencing the campaign. It can be a dual purpose. It can be that he wanted to cover it up for his wife and embarrassment in his family, and it can be that it was right in the heat of the last few weeks of the campaign and he needed to shut these women up. And if that is one of the purposes, then he's guilty of that violation. And, you know, you can point to the John Edwards case all you want. That was a different set of facts, and this issue as to what the purpose of the campaign contribution was is an issue of fact. It is for the jury to decide. It is not something that can be determined before charges are brought or dismissed on a motion to dismiss on a legal basis in front of a judge. It's an issue of fact. And if prosecutors are able to bring that case, whether now or in 2021 or at some point, that's where it will be decided, in the courtroom with the jury.
And we'll see how they proceed there. Here's another one of these only in Washington moments about the cast of characters involved here. You saw Michael Avenatti a few moments ago. Mr. Cohen is represented by Lanny Davis, who was also one of Bill Clinton's attorneys back when they were fighting impeachment back in the day. I covered the White House in those days. Lanny Davis has now issued a statement on behalf of Michael Cohen. He says, Michael has owned up to his mistakes and fully cooperated with Special Counsel Mueller in his investigation over possible Trump campaign collusion with Russian meddling in the 2016 election. While Mr. Mueller gave Michael significant credit for cooperation on the core issues, it is unfortunate that Southern District of New York prosecutors did not do the same. To me, their judgment showed a lack of appropriate proportionality. That from Lanny Davis. He goes on in this statement to saying, I look forward to assisting Michael to state publicly, when the investigation is over, I look forward to assisting Michael to state publicly all he knows about Mr. Trump. And that includes any appropriate congressional committee testimony in any committee interested in a search for the truth. So A, this is not over. B, Lanny Davis is saying Michael Cohen has more.
And we do know that some of the congressional committees want him to come back to Capitol Hill, in part because they know that they were lied to about the Trump Tower piece of this. But I do think that you're going to see him, depending on when he has to report to jail, be top of the list, particularly for the House Intelligence Committee, which is now going to be run by Democrats, and certainly potentially other committees who will be oversight.
May I add, this issue of his false testimony to Congress potentially is a greater liability for the president if it's in fact provable that Cohen, as it was set out in the sentencing memorandum of Mueller, spoke to the White House about his testimony, and there is evidence that the White House influenced his lying testimony. That is a much easier prosecution than the false the campaign finance statements.
And I think it's not just that. I mean, you know, we have been talking obviously about the campaign finance violations because this is where the president is most clearly implicated in this. But when you look at, you know, the special counsel's interest in Michael Cohen, they were very interested in the Trump Tower Moscow project and how long that went on. And they weren't just interested in that because they care about suddenly investigating the Trump business. They're interested in it to see if there was some kind of collusion mechanism there, if there was some reason, you know, that Donald Trump might have been getting some favorable treatment from Russia and would, you know, make him want to treat them favorably in exchange, in addition to whether he was working with the president or other people in the White House as he was, you know, creating this false testimony to Congress. So I think there are a lot of places where Donald Trump could potentially be exposed, not just on what Michael Cohen gave to SDNY, but also what he gave the special counsel.
I think to back up that point, the Office of Special Counsel representative at the sentencing today saying almost nothing. Saying, Michael, we believe he's told the truth, we believe he's cooperated, not sharing anything about other investigations quickly.
Keep in mind, at the beginning of this, the Trump team was paying for his legal fees, and so that is also part of the story. Does the Trump organization face any consequences for what Michael Cohen says he did?
Well, we need to take a quick break. Sorry, we'll continue the breaking news coverage in just a minute. Again, Michael Cohen sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. How will it impact the president? How will it impact all the investigations here in Washington? Be back in a moment.